Translit 262, Task 7, Assignment Number 2, Grandma Moves West. Well, you know, Grandma wasn't no spring chicken when Ma was born. If truth be known, she wouldn't see 48 again. Matter of fact, she probably was looking right at 50. Grandma had already raised her first brood, and they had kids older than my ma. Grandma's story is something you read about in the Wild West books. She was born in 1882 or thereabouts. Oldest in a family of about 15. Hard to say exactly because they was always moving and kids was being born, and some of them, well, they just didn't make it. Grandma's ma and Pat, everyone called them Mammy and Pappy, they were dirt poor and always a-looking for something better. When Grandma was 8, the family sold off what little property they owned in Missouri and bought an old covered wagon and a team or saddle-weary horses and headed west. At one point, they were stopped by Indians. Grandma was pretty scared, but the Indians didn't want to hurt 'em. They just wanted honey, sugar, or cookies. Grandma cried 'cause they gave the Indians the last of the cookies. Anyway, they went on to Wells, Nevada, and had a couple more kids. But things was pretty rough there, and Mammy didn't like it much, so they moved on to Wyoming. Why Wyoming? No one ever really figured it out. It wouldn't surprise me none if they'd heard about sheepin' and ranchin' and figured out, if nothing else, they could raise chickens and pigs. They settled in Wyoming, moved from one homestead to another. I don't know if they ever raised chickens and pigs. Pappy really wanted land, and he got an offer he just couldn't refuse. Seems there was this old coot who had lots of land, but his wife died. He asked Pappy if he'd trade his oldest daughter for some bottom land. Pappy agreed. Grandma, being the oldest daughter and only 13, well, she wasn't thrilled. Matter of fact, she was downright mad. But Pappy was the boss in the family, and that was that. Or so he thought. The minute the wedding was over, Grandma's brothers, who didn't want her living with some old geezer, grabbed her and took off. They hid her out in one of the caves in a nearby field and took shots at anyone who came close. Pappy had to go over and meet the old guy and tell him the deal was off. But the stories don't end there. Grandma married when she was 15, a guy closer to her age, but he was a mean one. They didn't own nothing, but they had 5 kids that lived and 4 that didn't. Grandma was ambitious and really could do lots of stuff. She ran a boarding house, she raised chickens, she cooked in a restaurant, and when she wasn't having kids, she and her husband split up 5 or 6 times, but managed to get back together. Finally, they split up for good. So Grandma put her 3 youngest kids in a convent in Montana, and she became a cook for the Northern Pacific Railroad. She moved all over Montana and Wyoming, cooking for the repair crews for the road. After a couple years, she settled back in Wyoming and began to keep a boarding house again. She married again about the age of 45 and started her second family. Her husband, my grandfather, was a barber in the town and respectable and respected. He'd been a miner someplace in Colorado before coming to Wyoming. Or a card shark. No one knew for sure which. Anyway, life settled down and she successfully bore 1 daughter, having lost a son at birth. The townsfolk called her the Bird Lady because she raised lots of birds. She was quite the character. Because she was much older than the other gals who had kids, probably 30 years older than the oldest of them, she tried raising her daughter with old-fashioned ideas, like drop-bottom underwear and hand-me-down coats and things that weren't in style, even when they were new. She ruled the roost. Her word was law, and no one could argue with it.